now. So welcome everyone. My name is the Rev David Pyle. I am the Governance Program Manager for the Central East region of the UUA, and you have joined us for the January 2017 Presidents and Leaders Roundtable. We'll get into what this call is for in just a few minutes, but I want to make sure that you're in the right teleconference because we do have quite a few of them that happen, and sometimes people are in the wrong place. It's a joyous thing that occurs. We are going to get started in just a moment, but I want to begin with offering a Chalice Lighting reading. So our Chalice Lighting today, as I was thinking about what I wanted to bring, I wanted to bring a covenant that is shared and was written for a congregation that I used to serve, the Unitarian Church of Evanston, Illinois. It's known as the James Villa Blake Covenant. So to light our virtual chalice, we bring these words that they say in every worship every Sunday since the 1800s, and which many of our congregations also do. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So welcome everyone. The purpose of this call, and reminding people that are joining us, if you are coming on and you're not speaking at the moment, if you could mute yourself, that would help us to be able to hear one another. The purpose of this call is to have a regularly scheduled opportunity for congregational leaders to connect with the UUA Central East Regional staff. To share a few good ideas monthly with all the congregational presidents and leadership that both attend and also those who watch the recorded video. We know that we have quite a few people who are unable to make it to every meeting, but who do take the time in between meetings to watch the recorded video. So just to remind everyone, we are being recorded, and there will be a section of the meeting later on today where we ask you all to talk to each other around a certain question, and I'll remind you again that we're being recorded then as well. It's also to build community among leaders of the Central East region of the UUA, and for us to hear directly from congregations, your regional staff, what's important to you, and to aid in developing programming and capacity building training, so that we hear what challenges you all are facing as we are developing programming and training and workshops to help support your missions as congregations. So the first question I want to ask is, where are we all from? So not if we went through each of us and talked about what congregations we were from, that would take a little while. We're going to have the chance later when you share on the question that we're going to be asking. We're going to have a chance then for you to say your name and what congregation you're from so that we can hear that. But the first question I want to ask is, if you're from Virginia, either wave or say here on the call if you're from a congregation in Virginia.
Yes.
I know Bob Hatfield's on the call. So we have some Virginia people represented. So great. Anybody from Maryland?
I'm here from Maryland.
Hello, Evelyn.
Yes. Hi.
Anybody from the District of Columbia? Nobody from DC today. They've been a little busy recently. Anybody from Delaware besides me?
Linda Sanders from First U.
Hi, Linda. It's good to see you. Anybody from Pennsylvania?
Hi, Howard Barkin is here.
Howard Barkin. I see John Sayer.
Mark Tomlinson is also here.
Mark Tomlinson is here, so yes. So anybody from New Jersey? Nobody from New Jersey today.
Bob Munson.
Hello, Bob. There you are.
Yeah, East Brunswick, the Unitarian system.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody from New York?
Steve Barata.
Hello, Steve. Welcome. Anybody from Ohio?
Renee.
Besides Renee. Great. Anybody from Connecticut? Yes, we actually have a few congregations from Connecticut in the Central East region. And last but not least, anybody from West Virginia?
That would be me.
Hello, is that Steve Goodman?
Yes, it is.
Welcome, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we are here, at least in some form, in most of the states that consist of the Central East region. When I usually talk about what you all now have a good feel for what the Central East region consists of, but when I usually share it, I say from Northern Virginia to the New York-Canadian border with a little bit of Connecticut, and from the Atlantic Ocean to halfway through Ohio. The 198 congregations that make up this region. And thank you all for coming as we are building up this Presidents and Leaders Roundtable meeting that once a month we have a time where we're going to share some good ideas. I have some news. We have our first time that we will have a featured presenter who is not going to be a member of the Central East Regional staff. It looks like it'll be the March meeting. We will have Nori Gall from the UUA Stewardship and Development Office, the Annual Program Fund Office, to talk about the upcoming changes in the Annual Program Fund. So I'm giving you that as a clue for the March meeting to really invite your treasurers and your the finance people in your congregation to think about attending that meeting. So as we move on, our agenda for today, Chalice Lighting and Welcoming, talking about the purpose of this call. We're going to introduce Rev Renee Ruchotzke in just a moment. I don't think we have any other members of the Central East Regional staff on today. It's a very busy weekend coming up, and I know that we're off preparing for that. We'll talk about the April 1st Leadership Day and the UUA presidential debate. We'll talk about the upcoming events and the Central East Regional calendar. And then Reverend Renee is going to give us a presentation on 5 good ideas. Renee, you want to say what it is?
On leadership development.
There you go. And on the UU Leadership Institute. And then we're going to ask the question and have a conversation amongst us. What has changed since the election in your congregations, if anything? I'll preface that in a few minutes, but to give you a heads up, and then we'll have some closing words. Our goal is that these meetings are no more than 90 minutes. I try and make it a commitment that I start on time and end on time in all the workshops and trainings that I do. So a tiny little bit about me before we get started. My name is the Reverend David Pyle. I am the primary contact for our congregations in Greater Baltimore, Central Pennsylvania, and the Delmarva Peninsula. I host this call most months because I am the governance program manager. So I am the member of our staff team focused on the support we provide to congregational boards and to the governance structures of congregations. And Renee and I kind of share the two ends of that, being the work you're actually doing is governance, and becoming better for the work that you need to be doing is leadership development. And we kind of hold both of those portfolios together. So with that, I would like to take us off screen share for a minute and invite Reverend Renee Ruchotzke to introduce herself to us as a member of your Central East Regional staff. Renee?
Awesome. So I'm Renee Ruchotzke. I live in Kent, Ohio. It's the home of Kent State University. I've lived here since 1985. I serve the congregations in Northeast Ohio, so that's Akron, Cleveland area, Northwestern Pennsylvania, which is like Erie, Pennsylvania. If you do crosswords, that's a town that you know. And also Western New York, so Buffalo, the greater Buffalo area, sort of heading toward the Finger Lakes region, but not quite that far. The other piece of my portfolio is leadership development, and I'll talk a little bit about that, especially like the online resources that we have available, such as the UU Leadership Institute. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I guess that's just about it.
So Renee, is there anything you're working on right now, just to give an idea?
Right now, we are working on nationalizing the UU Leadership Institute. It's been a regional project, kind of a pilot, and we're in the process of creating a national group of core leadership development courses that I'll talk about, as well as curating our online resources so that they're easier for you to find. So if you need a quick answer, we'll have things marked and sorted on the UUA website. So if you want to find out like safety policy or I have a conflict, what are some things like, like first things to do in a conflict, those sorts of quick resources, we'll have those available for you.
Anybody have any questions for Renee? You're going to have some more time with her in a few minutes. But... All right, thank you all.
Anything on conflict resolution?
Renee?
Can you say that again?
Anything on conflict resolution?
Oh, conflict resolution. Right now there is a page on the UUA website, which is like conflict resources. So there's articles and some short videos and things that are available right now. And we're hoping to offer a course on more like conflict, not so much resolution, but conflict management. Because you don't want to fix people's conflict, right? You want to help people manage their own conflict with one another.
Okay.
And I also want to hold up that, you know, every congregation in Central East Region has a UUA staff primary contact. So one of the members of our staff that is your first contact. And if you do have a need, such as some active conflict in the congregation, I highly encourage you to reach out to your primary contact. Does everybody on this call know who your primary contact is?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I'll do a little quick thing in a few minutes to let you all know how you can figure it out. But, you know, please reach out to if there is active conflict that you're working with that you need some support on, please reach out to your primary contact to help you do that. So I'm going to shift our screen, bring back our screens for a minute. And thank you, Renee.
Here's me.
So the first thing I want to do is take just a minute, and we've been doing this on the calls, to remind you all of what are some of the upcoming events. And actually, I did that wrong. And to find out what are our upcoming events, the best way to do that is to go to the Central East Regional website, where we have an events calendar. Now, there's a couple things I want to talk you through about the events calendar real fast. One of the things is you have this nice version of it that is in a screen, but at the bottom of that, there is an easier to read listing version. And there's a little button here that says more. And if you click on the more, it takes you over to this page, which gives you a long, itemized, and even printable list of the different programs that are being offered, of the different events, different programs. And take a look at them. I'm not going to run through them. You can see that what we are doing right now is on that list. But there are all kinds of programs that are in your area. And your primary contacts try and let you know ones that are specifically. But just so you know, on UUA.org, there is the list of the Winter Institute is coming up. We have youth programs, next month's President's and Leaders Roundtable. I'm not going to run through it, but I'm just inviting you all to know that there is always this list of upcoming programs. People see the calendar and it's sometimes hard to read. So I just wanted to highlight that there is this easier way for you to look at it. And I also wanted to say, and let me bring this back over here for a second. We also have a second calendar that is your events, cluster events, and even congregational events that you might wish to invite other congregations to participate in. And this is also a calendar that is kept on UUA.org. And there's this nice link on the calendar page, on the events page, that if you have something that you wish to share, that you wish to have on that cluster calendar events, congregations and clusters calendar, you can complete an online form or just send an email to our communications consultant, Beth Casebolt. Has anybody's congregation ever put something on the UUA.org cluster and congregation event program? So be thinking about it. If there is something that you'd like to have advertised beyond your congregation, this is one of the tools. And once you let us know that you're doing it, our communications consultant is then aware and able to put it into social media and other things if that's appropriate. We just did that with a congregation in Delaware who hosted a workshop with Chris Cass. And just want to show you what that page looks like. Any questions about the upcoming events? So there is one big event that's upcoming that I want to draw your all's attention to, and that is the Central East Regional President Candidate Forum events. There are going to be multiple programs that are all based around a in-person in Bethesda, Maryland, and live streamed in multiple other locations. In-person debate by the three declared candidates for the presidency of the UUA, of our association. This is all on April 1st. The sites that are that already have live streaming planned for them is the in-person debate will be at the Cedar Lane UU Church in Bethesda, Maryland. The UU Church of Kent, Ohio is having a Future of Faith Leadership Conference that will have other programming built around that live streamed debate. Same thing, the St. Lawrence Spring Gathering and UUA Presidential Candidates Forum, once again, will have other programming built around that, and the UU Presidential Candidates Forum in Central Ohio. And I believe that there's at least one more in the Central Pennsylvania area that is in planning process. So just are you all planning on attending one of the events on April 1st?
I'm going to try.
Yay. So, and if your congregation desires to actually host a streaming, for people in your congregation to be able to see that, there is ways that can be done as well. And all you have to do is read this document here about how there's a link here on how you can live stream the event at your church to be able to see the debate for people that aren't going to the an actual one of the others. The debates, the time for the debates. Thank you for Linda. I believe it's going to be 10 a.m. We'll verify that as we get closer, but I believe the time for the debate is going to be 10 a.m. And I do know for the Bethesda event we have multiple programming. There's one other question's come up in the chat box.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Will you, besides live streaming and the events that you mentioned, it'll be taped for people? Our congregation up in Glens Falls, we don't have technology to live stream right now. So
we are planning to record that event, and we'll most likely be making that recording available, although I believe they're still doing a little bit of negotiation around that.
Okay.
But we have an intent to do that, and I'm not going to tell you for certain we are at this moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So thank you all. Any other questions about how you find out about upcoming events or how you get your events placed on the UUA website? So wonderful. So, and once again, those are where the locations for the currently scheduled ones are. So with that, I'm going to step aside and I will move to the role of just moving slides around for the main feature for Rev Renee Ruchotzke, 5 useful ideas for leadership development. Renee?
Awesome, thank you. So we come up with this 5 useful ideas thing, so you can kind of wrap your head around some, I maybe call them best practices or things that we're finding that are working well in the field. And so we'll just go ahead and I'll share the 5. The first one is when you are talking about leadership development in your congregation, it's not a one-size-fits-all. I have this model that I use of levels of commitment and involvement in our congregation. So there's people like you, congregational presidents and other leaders who are going to take time out on a Wednesday evening to come to a meeting like this. And I consider you to be staff or highly committed leaders. So ministers, religious educators, people you can always depend upon to come to the congregational meetings, to participate in decision making, to be on the board of trustees, that group of people. So that group of people, they've been around the block a few times. So, if they're looking for leadership development, maybe they're looking for something to deepen their own theological understanding, or maybe get a little bit of specialized training in stewardship or something like that. The next level of members is, oh, go ahead and keep on that slide, is our committed people. So these are people who are also leaders. Maybe they're not in the center of leadership or not in the room where it happens if you're a Hamilton fan, but they still are very interested and involved. And if they want to help the church, they're going to want to help develop their own skills and understandings. And then there's people who belong to the congregation. They've signed the membership book, they're probably pledging, but they maybe aren't quite as interested in leadership development for the sake of moving into leadership. However, they may be people that you might invite into leadership. So that's the group that you kind of pay attention to for potential leaders. Then there's the people who are interested in your congregation. They might, show up every once in a while, maybe occasionally write a check, maybe come to your yoga class that's in the basement. Those aren't necessarily the people you're looking for leadership. Sometimes if we get desperate and we're just pulling out the directory and calling people, we might accidentally call one of these people, but really they're people that we look at getting into our path to membership rather than our path to leadership planning. And of course there's the oblivious folks who for this purpose of leadership development we don't really consider, but for things like stewardship and communication and things like that, that's another group to consider. So go ahead and move the slide ahead. So that's the first idea or useful idea in leadership development, is just knowing who your audience is. So the second useful idea is really to think like a community organizer. And I really encourage your leadership development folks to not spend a lot of time creating and putting on trainings, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but instead focus their energy on getting to know the people in the congregation. And the best way to do that is doing one-on-ones with people. You do that in community organizing. You meet somebody for a cup of coffee, you hear, what's important to them, what they're passionate about, maybe some things they'd like to learn how to do better. Maybe they are in a dead-end job and are interested in leadership but never had experience, or maybe, they're afraid about leadership, or maybe they're, sometimes in congregations with some conflict, stepping into a leadership position means you have to grow a thicker skin. So just, hearing about their concerns, their interests, that sort of thing. Go ahead to the next slide. Another way, community organizing skill that we can bring to leadership development is doing small group gatherings.
Can you put, I'm sorry, you're still on number 2?
Yeah, 2 has a few different slides.
Okay.
I'm a visual learner, so I have a lot of graphics to go with what I talk about. So you can do one-on-ones, but sometimes that's not practical. So maybe you get together with small groups. And I'm going to talk about one way of doing that for one of the other ideas. I'll sort of double dip on this idea. But an idea of, getting, maybe if you have small group ministry, asking if that group, you could have a little bit of that group's time just to talk about opportunities for leadership development. Maybe if you're doing other sorts of large group kinds of things, like having a discussion, if you're interested in leadership, stay after the service, or you're interested in finding ways to get more deeply connected to the congregation, you can stay after the service and do something like you would do for like a new UU gathering. Do the same kind of thing for leadership development. And again, you ask the same kinds of questions, but you're just doing it in a group format. What's important to you? What are ways that you'd like to serve? I did this recently, talking with someone, and we discovered in our conversation that she would really be interested in being a part of the pastoral care team. So she didn't walk into the room thinking I want to do pastoral care, but through our conversation, she cares about people, she likes connecting with people, and it's like, oh, have you considered being a part of our pastoral care team? So it's really kind of helping to bring out the potential ministries for someone in conversation. So the next community organizing technique is just telling stories and listening to one another's stories, sharing experiences, hearing people's histories. So you might pull something out of hearing their stories. You might see something in them that they haven't seen in themselves. And, ministers do this all the time, that we're connectors quite often. So we hear a lot of stories from people and a lot of experiences. And so, for example, there's a lot of our members of our congregation who went to different women's marches around the country. And they might be feeling really energized around social justice. So, creating an opportunity for them to get together and tell their stories with some, people in the room who have this leadership development lens that they're looking at. They might be able to suggest, your leadership development people might find ways to help these energized marchers find ways to connect with ministries in your congregation and perhaps leadership. And I think that's the last one on community organizing. Oh, no, one more. Oh, that's right. And the other thing is there has to be meaningful work that you're inviting people into. So, every role in the congregation, every job in the congregation really somehow should connect to the mission of your congregation. How are you helping people to live lives of inspiration, of meaning? How are you helping people to grow? How are you helping to serve the wider community? How are you helping to serve and care for one another? So being able to frame service in those kinds of ways just enriches the conversations that you're having with people as you're finding out what their gifts and talents are. And there's one of our congregations in Southern Delaware County has a program called Growth Through Service that they actually kind of created a program institutionalizing this community-based organizing method of leadership development. So they actually have a program where they meet regularly with members and can help connect them to grow themselves through service of either leadership or just regular volunteer activities. So go ahead, next slide. So the third useful idea is just having a clear path to leadership. There's a lot of informal ways that people get into leadership. Maybe you were at a service auction dinner with someone and you're talking with them, over the Thai food that somebody's made, and you find out something about them. There's these informal opportunities which are great, but they also tend to limit what our leadership pool is. So if you have other opportunities where if you're interested in leadership, if you're interested in serving the congregation in more meaningful ways, to kind of advertise that to the whole congregation. That there are opportunities for discernment, not necessarily a y'all come to serve on the board, but y'all come and be a part of these conversations so we can get to know you. Existing leaders can get to know you, and you can help share, how you might contribute, or grow yourself through your contributions to the congregation. So we often have clear paths to membership we work on, but once people sign the book, we don't always have a clear path to leadership. So sort of think about how well we're signaling how you can get into leadership in your congregation. Okay, the fourth is, so we did this in my home congregation, and I hope to blog about it soon. I guess I should have said that in my introduction. I have a blog that I and others contribute to called Growing Vital Leaders. I often share different ideas that folks have that share them with me, and then I share them with you all. So at my home congregation, we tried this, a teaser training event. So we called it a Grow Yourself, Grow the Congregation event. And it was an afternoon. It started at, I think it's 2 to 4:30. And so from 2 to 3, we had some sort of, like a mini training. So it's a little, like a concept that can help you, if you've done healthy congregations or healthy leadership, there's these leadership understandings that we have about how to manage your anxiety, how to understand how people respond to change, and how we as leaders can be wise about understanding that it's kind of a secret decoder ring to human behavior in congregations and groups. And it's useful understandings not only for our congregations, but for our families, for our workplace, for other groups that we're involved with. Whenever humans come together, there's interpersonal dynamics. So at these events, we share like a little mini training that people can use, and there's some interactive stuff. And then we have something really awesome to eat. So our first event, we had an English tea. So if you see here, we have little finger sandwiches, and we have little cookies and things that one of our members put together. And so we had a learning. Then we had this lovely you feel like you're being pampered, sort of food thing. And then we did the small group discernment. So we did the community organizing piece for the last 45 minutes or so. Then we all came together again. So what we did is the leaders were sat down with 2 or 3 of the potential leaders, and we just asked those kinds of conversations with them about their interests, their skills, how they might feel like they would have meaningful service, and we would suggest possible things for them. It wasn't a close the deal kind of thing. It was more of a discernment conversation, and then there would be follow-up later. So there's no pressure at this event, but there is an opportunity to just bring our attention and intention into how we can bring people more deeply into the congregation. And so we're finding that probably about half the people who come to this did find something that they could connect to. And we also got good feedback also at these events about it wasn't clear how to be a leader, or it wasn't clear how to be a member of the Pastoral Care Associate. So there's this, as leaders, sometimes our blind spots will come out in these kinds of conversations as well. So the 5th and final useful idea is the online training that we offer as the UUA. So we have a lot of webinars. I might say even hundreds of webinars that we have archived, and we're in the process of putting them into a more searchable, more easily findable format by topic. So these are things that you can point your folks to. They're these are growth and vitality that I have in this page. There's some on stewardship, there's some on conflict that we'll have available. This is kind of a work in progress right now. We should have this webinar archive up by General Assembly, so by June this year. But those are a little bit deeper learnings. It's not just reading an article, it's actually spending an hour like you would on a regular live at a webinar or a workshop you might go to at a district event. It's that kind of a good chewy nugget, but not a real deep training. For deep trainings, we have, next slide please, our RUU Institute courses. And I know I've seen some of you taking those courses. I recognize some of your names, so this probably isn't new to most of you. But what is new is that we are going to be I've been teaching a lot of these courses myself just to get it up and running, and because it's been my baby. So what we were doing now is we're in the process of finding nationally the congregational life staff. So Reverend David's and my colleagues, who's the different experts in different areas, and we're having them teach little bits and pieces of this. So it's going to be, each one of these will eventually be team taught. We're in the process of piloting strategic leadership right now. So that's kind of, the 101 is faithful membership. So that's going to be some basic Unitarian Universalism. It would be a really great class for you to offer after your new UU class. It talks a little bit about congregational polity and a little bit about what it means to be a member, including pledging. It also includes things like a little bit of UU theology, process theology, and some other Unitarian Universalist theologies. Healthy Leadership 101 is your basic healthy leadership course. And those 2 courses together pretty much make up what our week-long in-person leadership school used to be. So when you used to, spend $1,000 or so to send some of your people to Eagles or to Unilead, different regions have a similar kind of leadership school. Those 2 courses together are pretty much what we would teach in the week-long leadership school. And then we have this strategic leadership is really meant for board members. So there's things a little bit deeper about mission, a lot more about governance. We have Dan Hotchkiss do a couple of modules. We have Larry Ladd, who used to be the UUA financial advisor, doing a couple modules, some other people from the UUA. So that's more depth for leaders of your caliber. And then we'll continue to offer a leading adaptively class. So that's kind of, how do you lead when you don't know where you're going, or even what the problem is? So so these are really meant to be a series of courses that you can offer to your folks. And we're designing them so that you can sort of take them at the same time. So let's say you as the president and maybe your executive team decides to take leading adaptively. And you have some of your newer board members taking strategic leadership, and some of your up-and-coming leaders taking healthy leadership, and just some of your newer people who are enthusiastic taking faithful membership. We actually will have exercises where all of you can get in the room together and do some interactive stuff, so that you as experienced leaders can kind of cross-pollinate with your other leaders in a way that will hopefully enable you to kind of bond with one another. What we found is that people who go to leadership school together often bond with one another, and then the next cohort bonds, but there's not as much bonding between those groups. So the idea is providing opportunities for you to, at least for a Saturday, bond with your own leaders in this sort of way. So that's kind of the trajectory of where we're heading, and we're expecting this to be fully functional, hopefully by this time next year, that all 4 of those courses, at least the first 3 courses, will be team taught, and we'll have good materials for you to interact with one another at a in-house thing. So to explain it a little more, wait a minute, I'll talk a little bit more about that. The term for that is flipped classroom, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to talk also about the next slide, is that we all, along with these core leadership courses, we also have elective courses. So these are like the intercultural competency course taught by Rob Keithan. There's an outreach and growth course taught by Carrie McDonald from the Boston office in the UUA. We've got some theology courses, some history courses, a course on nonviolent communication. We have a brand new course this semester on transgender inclusion in your congregations. I think especially with our current political climate, our congregations were asking for, we didn't really have good resources, so we're just on the fly. We recruited a couple people to teach that course since we saw it to be a need. So we're always adding kind of these auxiliary courses with different UUA and non-UUA staff to, provide stuff to help you in the congregation. And if you think there's a course that we need to put together that you feel a real yearning for, let us know and we'll put it together. And so the last thing I wanted to say about the online training is that the idea is maximizing or leveraging the online learning so that when you get together in person, you're actually just interacting. So back in with the traditional leadership school model that you see on the left, you'd go away for a week, there'd be someone like me and David talking at the top, at the screen to you, and then you'd meet in small groups and do things, and it would cost a week of vacation and $1,000, basically to do that for one person. So what we've done with the Leadership Institute is we've put all the lectures online so that you can watch them at your own pace, at your own, leisure. It could be 3 a.m. For those of you who are of a certain age where we, wake up for a couple hours and fall back asleep, it's a good time to watch a presentation. And then we provide these materials for you to get together and self-organize the small group work that you can do. And of course, the cost right now is only $30 per class per person. So most congregations have a leadership development budget that, you can, it's affordable to send a few people. And we also do offer scholarships. So if you have like young adults, we're able to offer them some financial support as well. Or other people who don't have the financial means to afford the classes and your congregation doesn't. So with that, that's pretty much it for the 5 useful ideas, which at least I hope are useful for you and other congregations have found useful. So should we pause for some questions?
I have a question that I'd like. I'm Steve from Glens Falls.
Go ahead,
Great.
Steve.
Hi. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stay on for the whole thing, but I have a question that has to do with what was just talked about. Our congregation does a tremendous amount of indirect communication, and we even do what I call the old good old boy network. This person sounds good to me and it sounds good to you, so let's get them involved. And I'm really trying to get us out of that habit. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And then another thing that I was wondering that we're dealing with is when we move from one new leader to another, we don't really leave much behind for the person that's coming up in terms of, in the congregation, what the board was talking about, what their priorities were, what was most important that they identified. We seem to have a real gap, in preparing the new leaders to take on the role. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I think we do. Renee, do you want to respond?
Sure. So what we provide, at the UUA level is more general leadership development and training. And what you're talking about, it sounds like, is more your onboarding into your particular congregation.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of, in my own experience, there's kind of this continuum of how to do that. I know that when I part of the reason I'm so passionate about this is I became the moderator of my congregation 2 months after I signed the membership book. And so I was handed binders that the moderators kept every single piece of paper, including the minutes in, and I had to sort of leaf through those and kind of discern how the congregation was run from reading this paper trail of documents. So and it sounds like that might be an improvement from what you have.
That is, I was going to say, at least you had a paper trail. Yeah, that would be considered an improvement.
Yeah.
And I find it to be, it really hinders our ability to develop leadership, I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one.
Well, Steve, this is David Pyle. One of the things is that there's capacity building training, and then there is the coaching that your congregation's primary contact can help you all through in thinking how to apply those issues specifically in your congregation. So
Okay.
I would reach out to your primary contact and share this concern. And I personally, when I do governance work with congregations, I talk about how policy and procedure becomes that base that is what is the bridge from one leader to another. And so what good systems of having policy and procedure in congregations help solve that problem. And a lot of our congregations, frankly, don't have good systems of policy and procedure that becomes that place where you capture the institutional wisdom from one leader to another. So who is your primary contact?
To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you right now.
Okay.
Evan Kerbels.
Evan
I don't have
Carlson.
it. Yeah, I'm on my phone. I don't have it in front of me.
So I'd reach out to Evan and go from there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Renee on the presentation on both the 5 good ideas and also on the UU Leadership Institute?
Hey, it's Evelyn Pendleton, and I'm also just on the phone.
Hello, Evelyn.
How are you?
I'm good. I saw you the other day. Go ahead.
So, I love the ideas, and you may have said this already. Is the deck that you just presented in the email, or is it online, or?
You mean the slides?
Yeah, the slides.
Yeah, we will send those out with the video once the video is uploaded and ready to go in a day or 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, because I thought there are a lot of good ideas, and I'd like to share it with my board. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Renee?
Yes, I have a question. This is Felice Best from Glens Falls as well.
Hello, Felice.
Hi. I may have been, well, anyway, I was just wondering how I find out about the leadership course.
Renee?
UUinstitute.org is the address.
Okay, thank you.
And there's live courses. So there's a course that they're like 6 to 8 sessions, and every 2 weeks a new session opens. So the first one, you can register until March 31st, and the courses are available. They disappear at the end of June. So there's a little bit of incentive to get them done. Then we also have some courses that are just on demand, and you take at your own pace. And those are cheaper. Those are $15 instead of $30.
This is Steve Barata from Glens Falls. So I'm to understand, when you say they disappear at the end of June, you mean they kind of stop for a while?
Right. If you don't finish it by June, basically we turn off the course, and if you completed it, you get a certificate of completion. If you don't complete it, we'll enroll you in the fall, but you have to start over again.
Okay.
So it's
Think of it, I think of it this way. Think of it as like going a seminary for lay leaders that has semesters. And it operates in a similar dynamic where there is a fall semester and a spring semester, and there are the courses that you can basically audit that you can take pretty much any time. So is that a good characterization, Renee, to give people a grasp of it?
Yeah, that's good.
And some people use it as part of the training for our commissioned lay leader program, which is something that exists more in the western side of our region, but is growing into the eastern side of our region as well. So to be able to do more formal training and certification and commissioning as a lay leader in your congregation. Any other questions for Renee?
Yes, this is Linda Sanders.
Hello, Linda.
Hi. I'm just want to make sure I understand how we could use this. So the $30 courses has a recorded sort of video presentation and then some small group exercises to build off those presentations. Is that right?
Yeah, Renee, why don't you talk about how a class works?
Sure. And then there is a tutorial on the site that I just recorded that walks you through how it works. So it's a software where you watch a presentation, there's some discussion questions. There's a chat box in the bottom, so you can actually, I'll ask, where have you seen triangulation in your congregation? And then people share stories in the chat box. So it's kind of, it's a little like Facebook, but it's private. No one else outside of the class can see it. So you can also use those discussion questions with a small group at your congregation. And then every so often I'll give you some exercises that you can do. So I might give you a case study. I might give you like something where you line up in a continuum and like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Maybe create like a conflict scenario that you talk about and work with. I mean, you know how you do things at regular workshops that are in person? We basically give you instructions on how to run that yourself as a facilitator to go with it. So every 2 weeks there'll be another presentation, some more discussion questions. There might be a book chapter that we've scanned that you can read. There might be some articles that we'll link to. So there's multimodal ways of learning. It's not all video presentation. There's also supporting, chapters of books and things.
Well, that sounds fabulous.
And can congregations like watch this together? Like take, choose like one night a week you're going to come together and watch it together at a congregation?
Absolutely. And some congregations, just get one account and they all sit down together. The thing is, only the person registered with the account gets the certificate at the end. So that's we're not, it's not like this is a, place where the UUA is making a lot of money. The $30 fees basically go to, support some of the technology that we buy, as well as pay some of the non-UUA presenters.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Steve. That's a good point that was brought up, because in my case, I'm using my phone because we don't have the technology at Glens Falls, but I have limited data. So there are options available where, people in my situation could, join a larger group, it sounds like.
Right.
Correct. Thank you, Linda. Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Oh, and the materials are, you said something about next spring being available, or?
There's courses, right? If you go to the RUU there's about a dozen courses that are available right now.
Okay.
They just opened up last week, or started last week. So you can register. You have until March 31st to sign up for any of those.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add one thing. The instructors that Renee is able to get for these courses are really cool. Are people that, seminarians would love to go take classes from. You know, I there was, who was it that taught the juicy parts of Hebrew scripture last year?
That was Joan, actually. But Susan Ritchie, who was this history professor at Starr King, does our history courses. And Laura Kim Joyner is a nonviolent communication professor at Meadville Lombard. And then a lot of the folks that we have brought in, like Rob Keithan is a trained intercultural competency trainer. So, I mean, we don't pay them a lot, but we do we do pay them UUMA, our scale fair compensation. So,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Any other questions for Renee? Well, Renee, thank you for being with us. And I'd love for you to stay on the call, but you don't have to. We're going to transition now, and I'm not going to bring the screen back up. But just to some time where we share with each other. And I'm going to invite you to say your name and what congregation you're from before you share. But the question that I asked before, and this is what we're going to do for the rest of our time together. The question that I asked before was, what changes, if any, have you noticed in your congregation, just among the people, among what congregation feels like? What's different, if anything, since the election? I'm going to preface one of the things that we've been hearing that I'm checking with you. So this is the thing I'm going to say, so I'm not fishing. We're hearing anecdotal evidence that a lot of congregations are seeing more visitors than they've had in the past. And so, but it may be true, it may not. But I'm going to open the floor. What changes have you all been seeing in congregations since the election?
This is Katie Alberti from Mount Houston, New York.
This is who?
Katie Alberti.
Hello, Jenny.
Oh, Katie. I'm trying out a new microphone. Does this work? Anyway.
Gotcha. We can hear you.
So we've had a lot of visitors. Visitors have continued. Some of them have continued to come. I think our congregation has gotten really energized. We're about 120 people, and I think we have 25 people close in the City, and we probably have 10 or 15 DC without organizing into any conversation. And I think people are more, as a board, we're more cognizant of looking at our mission more deeply as we make decisions, because it really brings home to us how important we are kind of a beacon.
So thank you. We didn't hear all of that because the microphone had a small problem, but I'm hearing that you're saying you are seeing more visitors and that you are also looking at your mission more intently and closely. Did I hear that right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So thank you. Who else has one that they would like to share?
Steve Barata from Glens Falls,
Hello,
New York.
Steve.
UU, hi. We've been noticing for quite a while, actually, since not necessarily since the election. It was going on a little bit before the election. We're kind of going through a growth spurt, which is really nice because membership was really flat for a while, and we were getting very concerned. And we're going through this very healthy growth spurt and trying to figure out, why it's happening, how to direct it, not direct it, but, channel the energy. So I guess, yes, we've seen more visitors. That's a part of it. But also I have noticed there seems to be more people engaged. For instance, our social action committee went from being a non-working committee to 3/4 of the congregation have joined it. And everyone's taken an action area because it's so large now that they would like to work on individually, because the group figured they couldn't do everything that all those people wanted to do. So there's this enthusiasm, and that is really wonderful.
So am I hearing that, one, you have had more visitors and you've also had more growth, but what you've also seen is a greater level of commitment and engagement from the members of the congregation that were already gathered. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Who else has something that you can share that you've seen that has been a change in the last, let's say 3 or 4 months?
This is Todd from Cedar Lane. We've had more visitors, And the ones as a welcomer I've run into have been interested in the social justice aspect of what we do. And also, the people that are engaged in, have been engaged in social justice are now more interested in advocacy and are signing up to a group, went down to immigration support rally at the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church in DC, and then walked to the White House for a rally. So things, people seem, as you say, more engaged.
So John, hi John. This is John Gunning from Cedar Lane in Bethesda, Maryland. So what I'm hearing, John, is that you're seeing more the shift from maybe more service-oriented to more advocacy-oriented justice work. Is that what you were sharing?
I think it's the same amount of the service kind of thing, but more people and interested as well, and more different people involved in advocacy.
In advocacy work. Okay, thank you. So who else has seen something that's been shifting in the last few months?
Hi, this is John Sayer at Thomas Paine Unitarian Universalist Fellowship outside of Philadelphia.
Hello, John. Good to see you.
Yeah, I would say I would echo what other people have said. We saw a very big influx right after the election, really big, and without doing anything, people just found their way into our doors, which was fantastic. I don't know that we've maintained that same level. We certainly see visitors. We were also seeing new visitors prior to the election, but I think we've seen probably more, and many of the ones that have been coming in have been coming back. Our social action team has been revitalized. Our team was really dwindling down to almost inaction. And very soon after the election, we had tried to get it restarted and get people energized about doing some different areas. But we're small, and so we had sort of had to focus on, okay, let's figure out one area that we can focus on type of things. Suddenly after the election, 15, 18 people wanted to be part of our social action committee, and as the other gentleman said, suddenly we're able to divide up into 4 different sub-teams and look at 4 different areas, and we've seen a lot more activity there. So that's a very big positive for us. We're trying to do more outreach out to our community as well. We've always done some things with the local food pantries and things of that nature, but now we're trying to do some more things to publicize what we do and who we are to the community at large, non-traditional types of activities. We're looking at in the next couple of months participating and helping to sponsor or at least providing a group that will volunteer at just a local event that our watershed is putting on. It's they race up to the top of a mountain, race back down to the bottom of the mountain, and then canoe for 2 or 3 miles or something like that. And so we're going to volunteer, have groups out at that, helping to just pass out water or do things with, T-shirts and buttons and things like that. So, and we're looking for more things like that we can do to just get more visibility in the community at large and let people know that we're here. And if people are concerned, scared, looking for a place to come and talk about it, that we're a place that people can come and do that. So we've added things on our website to invite people along those lines as well. And we're trying to really stretch out into the community and invite people to come and see us.
So John, I'm hearing, one of the things I love about this conversation is that we kind of iteratively add stuff and grow. And I'm hearing something in addition to what we shared before, and that is that you've seen a difference in the pastoral needs and the spiritual needs that people are bringing, and that a lot of that really centers around providing connection and space and justice work. Is that, did I hear that right, or is that just the chaplain and me hearing that in places that I want to hear it?
A little of each. We are seeing definitely, especially the LGBTQ community having a lot more concern right now of things. Folks who are currently getting health care through the Affordable Care Act, taking a much bigger interest in battling to try to keep the pieces of the Affordable Care Act that they like and things of that nature. So, yeah, there's been this kind of need for people to be reassured and for people to find ways to reassure each other that things will be okay through this. And it's led to a lot.
Thank you. I thought I heard that. So just to say, I'm hearing three things so far. I'm hearing the increase in visitors. I'm hearing the recommitment and focus to justice work and advocacy. And I'm hearing that there is some need, some pastoral need that is coming into our congregations at the moment. What else are you all experiencing?
This is Mark in Pittsburgh. I'm at Allegheny UU.
Hello, Mark.
And one of the hats that I wear is dealing.
Mark, you muted by a second. I'm about to unmute you. Go ahead.
Got it. Thank you. One of the hats I wear is online, website, social media, that kind of stuff. And we have noticed a very clear increase in traffic, people that are reading things that we post and liking our Facebook page and visiting our website. And so it seems like a great time, especially for congregations that haven't invested a lot of resources or volunteer time there. Now would be a great time to beef up what you're doing.
And we do have an upcoming webinar in support of that, I think. But you raise a point that a lot of times that our front door is our virtual presence, right? And a lot of people will think about going to visit a congregation for quite a long while before they get up the courage to walk into the physical doors of a congregation. So I think that we have had some other reports that congregations are seeing an increase in their web presence and traffic, and we've also seen a major increase in traffic at UUA.org. I think is also in line with that. So thank you. What else are you all experiencing?
This is Linda.
Hello, Linda.
I'd say all of the above.
Tell us the congregation again.
First, Wilmington, Delaware.
Thank you.
Okay, and we've seen increasing visitors. We've also seen returning.
And your volume is a little down, so if you could speak up or come closer to the computer.
We're seeing increase in visitors. Is that better?
Yep.
We're also seeing returning old members who had become inactive coming back to some of the events we've been having. We are having definitely increased social justice interest. And we've also seen interest in the congregations around us joining together on social justice.
Right.
So we're getting coordinated efforts between the three Delaware churches, which is really good. And I'd say another thing we're seeing, again, also the pastoral needs, people being concerned and upset and worried. And so there's been a lot of processes that Reverend Roberta's been running around that. We had a Roe v. Wade interfaith service, which was well attended. And we had a rededication of the 7 principles on the eve of the inauguration, which was very well attended with our congregation. So a lot of activity around our UU principles and then also around social justice.
Thank you, Linda. And I'm really fascinated by, our congregations having a lot of people who had drifted away or who had even intentionally left, intentionally coming back right now. And that's like most things in life and in congregations, that is both a blessing and a challenge at times, right? Because they may be coming, there may have been reasons or conflicts that were behind why they drifted away or left that you then need to, it's an opportunity to help engage those things that may not have been engaged at the time that they left. So I'm interested in hearing whether congregations begin in the next little while as people are coming back. How they adapt to helping to welcome those people back amidst how they might have left amidst some challenge. I know that we've got 4 or 5 congregations have contacted me in the last couple of weeks related to things coming back because former members have come back. So just to name that. Thank you. And you know, I also want to hold up, and you all are my peeps, so I'm gonna say this. You know, the 3 Wilmington area congregations coming together to do justice work together, I think is something that I also am wondering if we're going to start seeing more of across the congregations in our region. Because this is a time that we kind of don't want to be an isolated congregation anymore. We want to know that we are part of something larger. And I've been heartened by the work that the 3 Wilmington area congregations have chosen to do together. Who else has been experiencing something different? We have about another 15 minutes or so for this.
Hello?
Stephen, do you have something else you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that you were talking about congregations coming together to share social action. On February 2nd, Kingston UU, Poughkeepsie UU, Albany UU, Schenectady UU, Saratoga UU, Binghamton UU, Glens Falls UU, all our social action committees are coming together for a meeting to start discussing moving in that direction also.
That's a great idea. Wonderful. Who else? Is there anyone who hasn't shared, has something that they'd like to share? Howard?
Yeah, hi, it's Howard Barkin.
Howard and then Evelyn. Go ahead, Howard.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm from Bucksmont UU Fellowship in Warrenton, PA, outside of Philadelphia. And I feel kind of lacking or else seriously out of touch because I'm not aware of any membership growth or visitor growth or membership spurt or people coming back that had left. But one thing I guess I just have to say that it's kind of confirmed that the support that our congregation members have for each other in the days and weeks following the congregation, that, probably pretty obvious there, I guess. And then I know there's at least one example where some of our members went to some community events and were right after the election and ended up, Bucksmont is now sponsoring or, the home for some of those, for that one community event. So we are drawing some more people that way, at least, to come and see us. But that, and of course, it probably goes for everyone here. For the last weekend's women's marches in various locations, there was lots of support for people just with the logistics and trying to get, help each other to get from one to another kind of thing.
I've been really heartened by how many of our congregations decided, organically, without being organized by really anyone, to come together to make the presence at the Women's March happen as large as it did. Congregations sharing buses, and I can't think of a more bonding experience for 2 congregations than to be stuck on a bus for several hours in DC. So I'm really interested in how we. Thank you, Howard. And I also wondered if there's been for congregations that are in an interim ministry, whether there's been a difference. And I know that Bucksmont is currently in an interim ministry. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely affected, again, the obvious stuff. It's affected the tone of, of everything, but I'm sure we're all going through that.
Yep.
So a lot
Evelyn
of
from Channing Memorial.
Right. We are also in a period of interim ministry and time of transition. Lots of changes, so I don't know if it can be attributed to the election or not, but our attendance is up. We're attracting more visitors. The one thing that I've noticed, we are a middle-aged and older congregation. We don't attract very many young families, or they come and they don't come back. But this year we've had several young families with preschool-age children, and they are coming back. So I don't know if the election has affected them more than us older people, but I see that as a positive change.
Has anybody else been singing more young families or Gen Xers like me or millennials in this time, or has it been another demographic that's been coming more?
We've been seeing some more young people, not necessarily people with families, but Gen Xers and that like. Yeah, in Glens Falls, we've been seeing younger people come in.
Thank you, Stephen. So who else is seeing something in the last couple of months?
Hey, it's Evelyn from
Hello.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Hello, Evelyn.
Pendleton from Lancaster. Hello. So, I mean, I can say a lot of the same things. I mean, we also do have Reverend Barbara, who's new and awesome, and she just started. So I do think that the increased membership is more driven by having her help us with our transition. But we have seen new members, and the cool thing about the Women's March that I really liked, it wasn't just that we saw, old members come back, which was really great. But we also got a bus we got 2 buses, and we filled it up with people outside of the community. So that's outside the church, I should say. So what was just exciting to me is to be on a bus with a bunch of people that weren't UUs that could see what we do, and that we're pretty normal, and it's a really cool religion. Anyway, thought I'd share.
Thank you. And I think, some of the times that we do our best outreach, our best advertising is when we're in the community doing something and the community decides to join us, not because we're UUs, but because they believe in what we're doing. And, and that we, some of our best expression of ourselves is the kind of thing that you all had happen in Lancaster, where I think it was almost half of the people that went with you all were not members of the congregation. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's correct. We only had about 50 UUs. So, yeah, it was
thank
great.
you. What else are you all seeing? We may have plumbed the depths, but I'm hopeful.
Hi, Bob Munson from the Unitarian Society, East Brunswick.
Hello, Bob.
We've had some confounding things. We have seen new members or new visitors come in. We have a new minister. We have more of a Facebook presence. We have built up our website. It's still in the process. A neighboring congregation, the Somerset Hills, had a gathering this last Saturday that for the community that they had. Let's see, the first half of it was tables set up from various organizations. So there was like a dozen different tables and speakers there organizing for things. And then the latter half was in the sanctuary that, speakers. But they had like upwards of 100 people, and we had 4 of our members go to that congregation. So there is more energy. We're challenged by being able to keep up with it all.
And I want to second that that's been something that I've heard as a refrain through much of our conversation, is that, and it's sparked the thought for me, so I'm going to check it with you all, and that is that yes, we have all this new energy, and how do we organize it, and how do we access it, and how do we help people to engage it? I'm wondering if it may be time to think about putting together something like a webinar on organizing for justice. On helping congregations think through and have some good tools on how to organize for justice within a congregation. So this is one of the reasons why we like to have this conversation, is to be able to hear what's live for you in your congregations to help us know how we can better help you. The other thing that I've heard is, there is some need for us to be thinking again about welcoming. And providing some intentional resources to help congregations in welcoming, and as Mark pointed out, on online presence. And I know we have the upcoming webinar that's already scheduled that you can go to the events page to find out about. What else are you all seeing? Anything else that's been new and shifting? And silence means we may be done. So I will give it another minute to see if there's anything that the Spirit moves us.
This is Katie from Mount Kisco again. One of the things we're sort of grappling with is that we've always been very tight fit in our facilities, and we're trying to figure out how to move forward with all the important work on mission, doing justice work, and still give some attention to making the facilities doing a better job of living with what we've got and investigating what do we do to get more space. So as the president, I'm kind of balancing where I want to guide the energies of the congregation, not to spend all of our time trying to figure out where we can store the tables rather than who are we going to have sitting at the table.
Right. And I think that that's a regular challenge that some of our congregations, especially when we begin to grow, really begin to run into, and that is one or another form of resource limitations. And there are multiple different forms of resource limitations. Not having a good organizational structure for how you empower people to justice work is a form of resource limitation. Same thing with building space. So I'm interested in how shifts in how our programming and how our mission can sometimes be defined and limited by the resources that we have available, by those resource limitations. And that's kind of where you're going. Am I right, Katie?
Yes, it is. And it's interesting you mentioned not having a good organizational structure to get people into justice work. There has been an allergy in our congregation for at least 20 years to actually having a either social action, social justice committee, and yet we probably have 25% or more, maybe 50% of our congregation involved in things. It just sort of happens, and I'm not sure that's the best way to do it, but it's happening, so we're happy about that.
Yeah, I'm going to think through whether we can put together some kind of resource training webinar or something related to organizing for justice. I'll take that to our program manager for Justice Ministries, who is the Reverend Megan Foley, who is also the regional lead for our region. And because I think that's something that a lot of our congregations are running into at the moment. I also want to say that that conversation about how to use your space and how how to not have their space be as much of a limitation, that's a good conversation to have with your primary contact, a good coaching conversation with a primary contact. So I encourage you to reach out to the primary contact and see if they can help you think through, not that they're going to have resources or an extra building in their back pocket, but to be able to think, be a thought partner in how you think through that, because lots of congregations have faced that challenge and found creative responses. And knowing exactly, having a good feel for what your particular challenges are can help them to help you come up with some of those creative responses. Anyone else?
I'll have another dip. John Gubbing from Cedar Lane. Yeah.
Please.
We have a lot of people organizing and getting new groups started. We have two different a refugee group and an immigrant group now, which are both bringing people together. And there's a lot of, the state legislative ministry is drawing people in, and UUSJ is drawing people in for the federal level, and it's a challenge to staff, but I think that if there was a way to help staff deal with it, rather than this idea of everybody doing the same thing, which seems to be a constant thing in the background, is that I guess that would make it much more simpler for staff, but I don't think it has the same appeal to everyone's individual passions and interests.
There is always that tension between having your congregational staff do something because that's more efficient, and having it done by lay leaders because that's church, right? I mean, and so I hear that. I hear that concern, and that's just a tension we live in, I think, especially in medium-sized to larger congregations. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to say, Renee, you've been able to listen and reflect. Have you had any thoughts that have come to you as you've been listening to us share about this?
I'm just always so appreciative of your leadership in the congregations, and just want you to feel, I don't know, that sense of connection that, we're all facing a lot of the same things, and I'm hoping that helps you, because sometimes leadership's really lonely. Hopefully you don't feel that way, but sometimes it can feel that way, and just knowing that there's other leaders with similar kinds of challenges, for me was always helpful, and I hope that you're feeling that as part of this. And I really appreciate Reverend David making sure this happens every month to provide this opportunity.
So, and that's a great segue too. This happens every month. We'll send out again in the next couple of days, we'll send out this video along with the PowerPoint slides. And we will also send out what the basic program ideas will be for next month. The big thing I want to say is March, we are going to be having an important conversation about the annual program fund. And in particular, there'll be two parts of that conversation. One is us moving towards what we call a unified ask, which is where there will not be a separate check going to the district or region and then a separate check going to the UUA. It'll all be one number for support of the association through the annual program fund. And then we will also talk a little bit about the UUA board's intention and the process we are working to create, moving away from the annual program fund being done through a by-member pledge, so the amount per member, and towards a percentage of common expenses across all congregations. So moving away from that there's quote a tax on having more members, right? Which is not a great way to grow a religious tradition, frankly. So we're going to have representatives from the stewardship and development team. I think it's going to be March. It could be April. We'll let you know. I'm hoping it'll be March, to come in and talk with you all about those two things and be available to answer questions. With that, are there any final questions or thoughts before we close up our time together tonight?
This is Steve Barata. The very last thing you mentioned, I missed part of it. You said you were going to move away from the by-member contribution and towards the what?
So the UUA Board of Trustees voted last October that we are we're intending to move away, and this is not going to happen immediately. This is going to be several years in the making, could be, even a little more than that. But the intention is the annual program fund, which is how congregations support the Unitarian Universalist Association, that provides services such as, that provide services to congregations, such as Renee and I, among other things. That has been done through a certain amount, basically a fee, a recommended contribution for based on how many members you have, towards a recommended contribution based upon a percentage number of common expenses. So that congregations generally have certain kinds of operating costs, certain kinds of building costs, certain kinds of staffing costs, and a percentage of a formula that is being worked on right now. There was an experiment of this done in the southern region about 2 years ago, began 2 years ago, and that experiment was successful enough that they are tweaking it and making it better, and intending to move towards that for all of our congregations within the next few years. But they'll come and they'll talk about that in detail. Does that give you enough to be able
yes,
to
it
know?
does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So I'm just prefacing that conversation, and our eventual goal with these calls, we've started off with having the presentations being done by members of your Central East Regional staff, in part so you get to know us, and so we get to know you. But the intention is I want to grow these calls into where we're able to bring not just our own regional staff to be present with you, but members of our national staff as well. And so if there are things that would be helpful, I'd be happy to hear about them. If there are topics you'd like us to engage, I would love to hear from you. And I am easy to find. It's D as in David, Pyle as in Pyle @uua.org. So if there are topics you'd like us to engage, let us know. I know that some of the topics we'll be engaging in the next few months will include youth and young adult programming. We're also going to be engaging the Commissioned Lay Leader program during the spring and talking about that program within the region. So there'll be, and there'll be quite a few others. So any last minute questions for me before we go? I'm going to do a closing reading and then any last minute questions? So thank you all for taking the time and coming to be here. As I say, we start on time and end on time, and we are doing that today. I like to bring readings from the hymnal. I know lots of people find readings all over the place, but I like to bring readings from the hymnal because I think that we don't see it often enough. My soldiers love to steal these from me because they love the readings in particular that are in the back of it. I say soldiers, those of you who don't know, I'm also a reserve U.S. Army chaplain. And this is number 655. Change alone is unchanging. Whosoever wishes to know about the world must learn about it in its particular details. Knowledge is not intelligence. In searching for the truth, be ready for the unexpected. Change alone is unchanging. The same road goes both up and down. The beginning of a circle is also its end. Not I, but the world says it. All is one. And yet everything comes in season. Heraclitus of Ephesus. Thank you all very much for being here. We'll have the video up in the next couple of days and we'll send the slides out. I love that I get this time with you all each month. Thank you all for coming. It's good to be with you.
Thank you,
Dave.
Thanks, Dave.